shark targets now.
Which, who wants them?
They're fun to catch.
They're fun to catch. My kids love catching them. It's their favorite thing to catch. They like to see a shark.
It's a lot of them.
And I've got your license plates too.
Number 2300.
Thank you.
Hey, Jackie.
Hey, JC,
How you doing? All right. See you. What kind of engine you got out of the car? C9. What did everybody, 425?
503.
Oh, 503.
Make 'em up.
I have 4 o'clock, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is our Shellfish Management Advisory Committee meeting, August 13th, 2026. The time is 4 o'clock. I'm Jackie Shannon, Chairman, Chesapeake, Virginia. We can start with introductions. Andrew, if that's okay?
Yep, that'll be
All
fine.
right, can we start with you, Bev?
Bev Ledford, Pleasure House Oysters.
Tom McKellum.
Ben Johnson. Richard Hardy.
J.C. Hudgens.
Lee Deal. Corey Rice.
Monica Shenneman.
And do we have folks on the phone?
Diane Dowers.
I think that's only committee member on the phone there. I think it looks like Don, I don't think will be able to make it. He's still stuck in traffic getting back, I think, from a trip there, so.
Okay, then next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Move approval. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next, we have Heather Lockwood here from Army Corps of Engineers to give us an overview of the Army Corps and VMRC project, the Tangier-Pocomoke Sound Phase 1 Oyster Restoration Plan. Thanks for being here, Heather.
And just a reminder for folks, if anyone's making public comments from the audience or anything, please come up to the podium so we can make sure we capture it and everyone can hear well. Thanks, Heather, for being here. You can drive like this there, but that should be your slide right there.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon. Thank you guys for having me. Again, my name is Heather Lockwood. I'm a project manager for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at the Norfolk District. And so I run our Chesapeake Bay Oyster program at the Norfolk District. And so today I'm just here to let you guys know about our upcoming effort in the Tangier-Pocomoke Sound in partnership with VMRC. So to start, this is just a brief reminder. I'm going to give a little bit of a history and then talk about our path forward. So this is our path forward slide, and this is my only slide because I wanted to keep it brief about what we're going to be doing. So this is under the Chesapeake Bay Oyster Recovery Program. It's a federal authority authorized by Section 704B in Word of 1986. So even though it was authorized in 1986, the Norfolk District's first project with VMRC as the non-federal sponsor was in 2001. In the Tangier and Pocomoke Sound. So that was our first project. We constructed 158 acres. 150 of those were open reefs. 8 of them were sanctuary or closed reefs. And then from there, we pivoted to work in the Great Wacomico, the Lynn Haven, and the Piankatank, constructing all closed reefs. So now, 25 years plus later, we're looking at what's our next major effort, what's our next focus area. And we'd like to go back to Tangier, not only go back to the Tangier-Pocomoke Sound and construct closed reef, but also look back to constructing open reefs. It is well within the federal authority to construct harvest reefs. Just one of the reasons that we just pivoted away from it was just where the district and the Corps decided to move. There was obviously others constructing open reefs. And so we felt like now would be a great opportunity to relook at constructing open reefs. We do have to justify that is within the federal interest, which is what we have done in our planning document, which is a decision document, or this is what's called our Phase 1 decision document or our plan. So that is what you see here on the screen. And we released our draft report in April of this year for public comment. And what that went into detail with, it was a comprehensive plan that was developed for not only just these acres that you see here on this slide, but it was comprehensive. It identified over 4,000 acres of potential reef bottom That could be a mixture of harvest and sanctuary, open and closed reefs. And then, of course, with this authority, there is an authorization limit. It is 120 million federal. And so of that authorization limit, only about 40 million is left. So we can't construct 4,000 acres with just that amount of money. So we had to break it up into constructible elements. So of the 4,000 acres for phase one, we have decided on restoring up to 275 acres. So the first constructible element of this of this larger scale comprehensive plan for the Tangier-Pocomoke Sound will be up to 275 acres. So how these reefs were identified, both on the slide and as the comprehensive plan, were through a series of modeling. We had Virginia Institute of Marine Science do a hydrodynamic and larval transport modeling to help us identify the best way to see where we can construct source and sink reefs. So that way, if we are constructing closed reefs in areas that are then the larval transport is then maybe feeding those open reefs. And so that way, the goal is to create an interconnected system. So the locations of each of these types of reef were picked by the modeling as well as public and stakeholder input. We've gone out to Tangier, we've talked to the watermen, we've also obviously close coordination with VMRC, we've gone to the town of Saxis multiple times, as well as just of course public input during the draft report release to try and help identify locations that would also be beneficial for the watermen. We don't want to place a reef in an area where it's just not logistically possible for them to go out to harvest the oysters and then come back every day. So a lot of coordination went into the identification of these reefs. And again, so what we'll be moving forward, our final report will be released before the end of the year. We're about 35% level of design on this phase one plan, which consists of 200 acres of closed reefs, 60 of open, and then we're doing some nearshore reefs on the southern spit of Tangier. One thing I'll just note, you might be wondering why 200 acres of closed and 60 of open. One of the biggest things is the way that we're going to construct the closed reefs is placing material only on 30% of that bottom acreage, which is 60 acres. So when you look at it as placement of material on bottom, they are equal. So we're only going to be placing material on 60 acres of the closed reefs and 100% coverage for those open reefs. That's just something that we've been doing for the past 10-ish years, and as like a best management practice for oyster restoration is if you can place material across 30% of the bottom, then we can count that as a the full acreage. So I just wanted to point that out so that way you can see that it actually is equal in acreage bottoms between the closed and open reefs. As far as designs and targeted heights and substrate, so for our closed reefs, we are looking at about a 12-inch layer across, again, that 30%, so across those 60 acres. And then for the open, we're following VMRC's guidance with how they replenish reefs now and doing about a 3-inch, likely with shell, pending the availability of shell. But we did leave it open that if stone was the preferred method for those reefs, we'll use a small stone. And then the nearshore reefs, we're doing some additional modeling to make sure that once we place the material along that southern spit, we're not going to modify any other portion of Tangier, as well as we know there's oyster and SAV resources on the eastern side of that spit. So again, we don't want to impact that. So far, if we place material there, we're seeing no impacts to either of those areas. As far as material type, right now we're running some models on some storm events to make sure that if a storm event were to come through, we're not placing material that would just get blown out. So we want to make sure we're placing material that can be good oyster habitat, essentially stabilize that shoreline as an ancillary benefit, and then also just stay put during an event of a storm. So that's what's ongoing now. And so we're going to be moving towards 65% design now, kind of narrowing in on these reef locations, because what you see on the screen there, the polygon set is more than 275 acres. So now we're going to be looking even further on kind of identifying within some of those areas where we actually want to place the material. Of course, we already looked at bottom type and to make sure that the substrate that is suitable for placement of reef material, but kind of, again, looking further into that. The other thing that I'll just mention about what this phase one does, those reefs 3 and 30 in the top right corner, those are what are called stepping stone reefs. So the intent with those, they are kind of laying the groundwork for phase two. So with the modeling, We've noticed that, you know, there are some areas that might be not connected, so by constructing these reefs first, our phase 2 likely might be around Saxis and the shoreline of Saxis, and so we wanna make sure that we're connecting the reefs so that way, and the modeling results show kind of a hook from 3 to 30 up to the shoreline of Saxis. So once we place near shore reef material up there, we've already kind of set ourselves up for success and the transport of larvae. So with that, the final thing that I'll mention is we are, you know, of course, tracking our construction contract for hopefully 2028. We have enough funds right now to support a portion of this. I should have mentioned that this is a 75-25 cost share, and a lot of VMRC's cost share percent, which is the 25, is through work in kind. So all of the great work that VMRC has been doing to construct reefs and replenish reefs in this area, we're able to credit them against the project because it's all, again, an interconnected system. So looking to kind of continue that, and it's a great model that we've done in other tributaries as well. And so we are, you know, continuing to hopefully get increases in the federal authorization to continue these efforts, as well as continue to support this project. And again, looking to construct in 2028.
Thank you, Heather. Any questions? I just have one question. It looks like 13A and B. Is there any consideration of putting some kind of big rocks or poaching deterrent between those two sections?
So yes, that's a great question. So when we actually go to construct, I know it shows that they are close to each other right now. We'll actually have somewhat of a differentiation between the two as far as spacing, but also one of the things that we talking with Andrew, we tried to identify geographic locations that might help the watermen identify when they're on an open portion of the reef versus the closed, and that's that northern piece of Tangier. So kind of if they are within a certain geographic location, they can kind of check to make it easier to know where they are. And the material that we will be using for the closed reefs will be non-harvestable size. So that's another way that we're making it kind of not harvestable in that way, to be able to pick up the oysters from that.
Any other questions?
I have one question.
Well, am I on?
Yes.
Oh, you'll go to Dan, then Lee? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt if I did.
Oh, good. Go ahead, Dan. Thank you.
I don't have a map. I don't have what you're talking about in front of me. I'm a little. I just want to know what the open reefs. What are you talking about when you talk about the open reefs?
Sure.
Hey, Dan, this is Andrew here. This is, I think you've probably seen most of this stuff before when we've had the public meetings over there, but the open reefs are areas that with federal funding we replenish in addition to the areas that we're talking about here. So it's additional areas there like Muddy Marsh and Shell Rock and Island Rock, and sort of adding on to those areas mostly we're talking about for the harvest areas. And then the closed areas are mostly areas that have very little or no current oyster resource and are kind of, like we've discussed at these meetings, sort of outside of the normal harvest areas and sort of geographically isolated.
Well, I missed the last meeting that you had here. I went to the first one, if you remember. I think it was in March, not this past March, but last March. And I don't remember anything about any open reefs. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little concerned about that. How many strings are attached that comes with this, with coming from the Corps of Engineers? I have quite a few buddies up on the Maryland side of this sound that the Corps has completely taken, like just about taken the rivers for sanctuaries. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little concerned about that. You can tell me that the Corps is going to help these open reefs, and they're just gonna say, you go ahead and do what you want with it. We're fine, you don't even have to run anything by us. You can tell me that, but I won't believe one word of that. I don't believe, I think we've come a long way, and the open reefs are a little concerning to me. The shorelines, the closed places, when I went to that meeting the other March, the bottom you were telling me about was like inside of what we call it the quick flasher. It's like over there around Beasley's Bay somewhere, and that's what we're talking about. And my concern was is that you were that much closer to open bottom, and the Corps getting involved is not going to help us. If you go by history, the Corps of Engineers getting involved is not going to help us more than a whole lot.
Well, thanks for those comments. I really appreciate that and the context. And that's one of the main reasons, we went out to Tangier and Saxis multiple times to kind of hear what areas made sense and what didn't. I will say, so the way that we're going to manage the reefs is the open reefs, as soon as they are constructed, they will be immediately turned over to VMRC, as similar to like an O&M, and then they will need to, manage them as they would any other reef. We will be do an official turnover letter and step away. The closed reefs and nearshore reefs will go under our adaptive management and monitoring, which is under policy for ecosystem restoration, up to 10 years of monitoring. So kind of the same thing, what we've done in Great Comico, Pankatank, Lynn Haven. We will monitor them. Once we reach what we think of as success metrics for the oyster, for a closed reef, we will then, same thing, turn that over to BMRC. And we're actually getting ready to turn over the Pankatank reefs here hopefully before the end of the year for phase 1 in Pankatank. And that'll be one of the main kind of first times we turn over the closed reefs in there. And that just, when I say a turnover, it just means that that's no longer a cost shared project. So it's now within the hands of BMRC, and different from that, like I mentioned, the open reefs will be immediately turned over to be managed after construction. So if there's specific, maybe we can get this map to you and you can look at the areas that we've identified for open reefs, because the intent and the hope was that, through the coordination that we've had, these areas were preferable and identified by the group.
Okay, I understand, but I hope you understand where my reservations are coming from. I don't know. If you go by history, the Corps of Engineers is not just doing this just to say, here, go ahead, take the keys and drive. I'm going to have to be proven wrong on that. That's all I got to. That's all I need to say on that. There's a history of it.
Oh, go ahead, Dan.
What did you say? I didn't hear you, Andrew.
Oh, I said go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
It's a history of it. All I got to do is just go above the state line, and I can see it. The Minokan River is just about been wiped out because the Corps took it over. I'm very nervous about it. I'm very nervous about it. I don't know if I'm the only one from this area that's speaking on it, but I don't know if I'm the only one on the committee that shares this nervousness about it.
Well, Dan, just so you know, this is not going to be the last time this committee sort of sees this. We just want to kind of get this information out, and prior to construction, this committee will hear sort of more details of this as part of the ORP next January or February when we have that meeting, and then sort of will ultimately go to the commission as well, just for this first phase 1 construction, and sort of each subsequent phase would need that same level of approval. So I just wanted to make sure that you all weren't surprised by this, and asked Heather to come out for that, to sort of get this in front of you and to think about. And we don't need to take any action on it now today. We'll have another chance at it, but just make sure you guys are sort of aware of this going on, and hear your comments and concerns to try to make this a better project ultimately.
think we had a question from.
Well, I'm a little surprised by it now, because we've talked a lot about shell planting, me and you. And I've never once heard you mention the Corps of Engineers might be giving us money to plant these shells on these rocks, on Betty Marsh, on Holland Rock, on, I don't know what the other one was. But I've never heard this once. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little shocked. I'm a little surprised right now. We've had many conversations about shell plants,
Well, I guess,
seed plants,
I
all that
guess,
stuff.
I guess I'm thinking that the time with the maps there on Tangier, we kind of pointed to these areas and talked about it. So, I mean, I think that'll help is actually looking at the map and what we had input from, but, and again, this is until next year at this point, if everything comes into place, but, yep.
Moving forward with this, maybe the next presentation or sometime in between, I would like to see a map that designates the historical oyster rocks and where they are adjacent to these sites. I'm sure Andrew has the coordinates and stuff for that. And another thing I'd like to say for the record, I don't see anywhere on here what the cost and what the budget of this is. But Tangier's washing away every day. I feel like that these rocks on the bottom, right in the middle of the sound, could be better used for oyster habitat as living shoreline to maybe protect the island a little bit. That's just my 2 cents on that. But I would like to see the maps of the adjacent oyster grounds.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Tom.
What's the post-constructed estimated cost?
So we have in our draft report, it's about 55 million for the full 275, and that's total. And that is, I will say, that is at a 35% level of design with a very high level of contingency. So, that as designs progress, that will come down. One of the biggest drivers of the cost, obviously, is getting out there and just the, difference between going to somewhere like Lynnhaven or Pankatank. So we'll see.
Thank you.
Is there any way to see that in writing, that the Corps of Engineers will completely turn this over to the VMRC on the open bars completely?
Yes.
I think each committee member needs to see this, not in, and maybe it's just me, not in the kind of writing that laws are wrote up in, that 2/3 of the people can't understand. I mean, in plain English, that the Corps will completely turn this over with no influence, with no strings attached. I think that's got to be a must.
So the turnover and the operations and maintenance basically for the open reefs is documented in that draft report. We left copies of that, but hard copies actually, it's on our website, but also hard copies we left in the town of Saxis and Tangier, so that way folks could have hard copies to look at. And then again, the final report will be released at the end of the year. Now, this is would be considered part of a federal project, so we would be, coordinating with VMRC and checking in and seeing how things are going, because, it's part of our project. We want to make sure we have success. But as far as instructing VMRC how to manage these reefs, that is the intent to not do, to be able to turn it over. They knew what they're doing, of course. So, and then the only other thing I just wanted to add to your point about Maryland is, even though this is a shared authority with our Baltimore district, the political climate in Maryland versus Virginia is completely different. The way that our sponsors, DNR versus VMRC, do things differently, and the way that, the Norfolk district is proposing this plan, and this is specific to this plan. So we really can't compare apples to apples to anything that was done across the border.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Part of that is what just made me nervous. On the first part that you said, we will keep checking in. That right there is what makes me nervous. When I asked for a complete turnover, you said it was in writing, it was in the contract, but then you come right on the back of it and say, we'll keep checking in. That right there is what worries me.
And that's just to make sure that it's still, for the next phase, we have to continue to make sure it's within the federal interest to fund a phase 2 to include open reefs. So that's just to make sure that, this is the first time we've done it again in 25 years. So it'll be to just ensure that maybe phase 2, we kind of copy the model, make sure VMRC still wants to have open reefs in phase 2, and it just makes sense for, the larger collective group.
And just for Dan and the group, I don't want to hijack too much of this meeting. We got some other stuff going on, but Dan, any of these questions and stuff, I'd be glad to talk with you in extensive detail and kind of alleviate your concerns where I can and address them where I can't, and make sure that everyone involved knows about them, and continue the conversation. Again, bring this back to SMAC again next year prior to anything actually going in the water.
I think we had one more comment
All right.
from Rich.
Yes, thank you. You said it was 55 million. Is that for just this project here? 120 acres?
275.
275?
Up to 275, yep. Yeah, that's what it's doing, 275.
Oh, up to 275?
Mhm.
I thought you were saying that the closed reef, you're only gonna do 60 acres on that.
Yes, so of material placement, then you would, yes, like looking at 175. Mhm.
That's right much per acre? 200,000.
How much was 60? Not 275.
All right, any other questions, comments? Thank you for the update and looking forward to more. Oh, one question from the public. Do you mind coming up to the microphone just so we can get your comments on record? Thank you, sir. And please be sure, if you don't mind stating your name. Thank you.
William Saunders. I just heard, and I can be wrong in my ways of hearing and things or not, that you're gonna do these closed areas and turn them over in 10 years. And I'd heard that you're gonna plant stuff that are deterrents for harvesting or whatever, I assume boulders. When you turn that in 10 years, you've just turned over unharvestable land already, so you make that permanently no good, in my opinion. I just wanna leave it there.
Thank you for your comment, sir. Good to- Wait. We are going to move on to the next agenda item, the discussion, following up on, let's see, the proposed changes to shellfish tagging regulations.
All
Andrew,
right.
Thank you.
So this is just a quick overview of what we did last time around. There's nothing new on this slide, but we do have Sarah Good of VDH here if there's any specific questions about the proposed tagging regulation changes. Again, we took a first crack at it last year, and then that was postponed. And this won't be heard until the September commission meeting, so it's not on this next commission meeting coming up in August. But really, again, just a quick overview is we're going to one tag, combining that bulk tag and harvester tag. And it really is just updating language to be more compliant with National Shellfish Sanitation Program wording and sort of simplify things. And again, the delayed implementation wouldn't be until July of 2027. And we did check with VDH, and if you have existing tags, I think that came up, that as long as you're sort of filling out the information using a Sharpie marker basically, or your waterproof non-brand equivalent, that's fine to use those existing tags as long as they have this information. And really, this isn't really the intent of this is to again be more compliant with National Shellfish Sanitation Program, and then narrow down, be a little bit more specific in water body areas, so that, for example, if there's a recall for oysters and all that's on the tag is the James River, that doesn't result in the whole James River going down. So at a minimum scale, we're going to have the VDH growing areas numbers, which is just a 3-digit number that's already on our VMRC map. And then the public harvest area or the private lease would be what would be required to be on the tag. So it's not really a big change. It's just hopefully providing a little bit more collective protection for the industry if there is a recall, and better identification, and then just making sure we're still in compliance with National Shellfish Sanitation Programs for wording that's on these tags and in this regulation. And I can answer any questions you'd have on this, and again, Sarah from Health Department's here. as well.
Yeah, Andrew, so it would change the public fishery and private fishery as far as the harvester's tag? We won't use the one like we use now?
It would basically be the tag that you're using, depending on what you're using, you'd be using one tag, there you go. That bulk tag would be closer to what you'd be using for everything. So a lot of people in
Okay.
public fishery use that harvester tag, and technically, depending on how you interpret it and how you enforce it, that's supposed to go on every single container, which could be counted as individual bushel baskets. Most people just fill out one and it goes with the tote or the
Right.
that container. But this just sort of simplifies things. You have one tag and you just need to make sure that what you have on there is the number of oysters or the bushels of oysters or whatever goes with that harvest amount. That tag goes with those oysters, and it gets rid of the two tag kind of confusion that we've had, and simplifies things a little bit while updating that language for both traceability purposes and to remain in compliance with National Shellfish Sanitation Program.
Okay.
I don't think there's a lot of difference in it, the cosigning and.
Actually, I got these tags one time by mistake.
Yep.
It looked so close, I just used it, filled it out and used it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically the same information. One in theory is just supposed to go
Except it's
individual
on the bottom.
containers, and one is everything there.
Mhm.
If anybody else wants to look at that, that hasn't seen it.
Everybody needs to look at it.
And again, you can make your own tags. You don't have to get them from VMRC. They just have to be waterproof and have all that information. But
Okay.
we basically, instead of buying two tags, we'd just be buying one, and then any individual company that wants to make their own tags would just have to be in compliance and have that information on there. Now's your chance to throw the health department some curveballs,
Any questions for Sarah? Sarah, thank you for being here. Going once, going twice? You're off the hook. Thank you again for coming.
Are
Oh,
you
there we go.
leaving?
I think we have one.
At the last meeting, there was just a question brought up about, if we do go away from daylight savings time, we, don't discontinue that the health department would change the hours accordingly so that it wouldn't impact people who couldn't get their harvest done in time because there would not be enough daylight. Is that true?
So you're talking about the curfew times for the warm weather harvest?
And we're talking about the impact that would have on those times if we did not do daylight savings time.
The times that we have, the times that are in VMRC reg come from the analysis that we do based on the water temperature and air temperature of the previous year. And so that 10 o'clock for the hottest time of the year is just, it's also based on a formula given to us by FDA. So we don't influence that in any way other than entering these values into this table from FDA to come up with the 10 o'clock curfew for the June, July, August months.
I understand that, but if we don't have daylight savings time, 10 o'clock becomes 9 o'clock, or vice versa. I'm not sure.
But
how.
most of that will be outside of the warm weather curfew dates
Will it?
anyway,
Okay.
because it's March
He answered
March
my
to
question.
November.
Did you hear what he said?
And I think, if there is if they go the other way, for example, or whatever it is, it's more a matter of the amount of time, and we can adjust the actual clock time and regulation to correspond with the total hours out of the water, which is really what that formula does. So I think we can make those adjustments based on that.
I was just gonna kind of think it's more on a conservation issue of where the daylight savings time is gonna get us on our conservation curfew more so than the health department curfew.
I feel. And it may not happen, so.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It hasn't happened yet, so maybe we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Any other questions I can answer?
Thank you.
Thanks again. Another follow-up item, discussion of the modification of the 2026 oyster replenishment and restoration plan.
All right, so We had a little update, I guess, a while ago when the shell dredge went down, and just a request for a revision on this plan, and the committee can vote on this, but this will come up at this month's commission meeting. And what we're asking to do is to add an additional amount of stockpile shell that we can do on the eastern shore. We've done close to, when all things are said and done, we'll have done close to 60,000 bushels of shell being harvested over there just this year. We'd like to expand that up to 85,000 bushels, with planning to keep those on land until planting in the spring of 2027. This would still keep us under our, I think it was $1.5 million budget of this year's funds. But this would put, over 100,000 bushels likely on land and available for replenishment in 2027. And again, where those shells go would be determined as part of the 2027 LRP. But this would allow that stockpiling operation to continue, and these shells are coming from deposits on the inlets on the seaside eastern shore, and are being stockpiled there in Oyster Harbor. Recently, we've planted them both on the seaside and most recently out of Saxis on Area 10. They were just finished that project up this year. And prior to that, some of these shells were going in Pungatee Creek and Nassawadox Creek. And later in the season discussion, didn't come up last time, but Nassawadox Creek is likely able to be open to harvest for the first time in 20, 30, 40 years maybe, in part because of this work. So this would give us an additional tool in the toolbox to use for next year to sort of alleviate some of the resource that we've lost with the shell dredge likely not being operable. So again, this would be up to 85,000 bushels for use next year. And this will come before the commission in August, and just wanted this advisory committee to have that before them, and you can take action on it if you'd like. We just wanted to answer any questions you have on this, and if you all want to vote on it, that would be fine too, and we can bring that forward to the commission this August.
I think Tommy and then Jason.
Andrew, would staff consider extending this to also include that if you find an opportunity for house shell that's out of state, or an opportunity that's out of your normal window or season of purchasing and storing, that you would have authorization that if you find a good deal on 25,000 bushels of house shells that you
Would jump on it kind of thing, yeah.
yeah, and work out where you wanted to store it or whatever?
I think that we could likely work into it as sort of, hey, there's other opportunities, and if need be, we can usually get a commission meeting pretty quick, and some of this stuff doesn't necessarily have to go before the commission if we put it out for bid, for example. So this sort of gives us a little bit more flexibility. So I think we could work that in, and we can discuss it at a staff level of whether that's something that we want to bring before the commission as sort of an opportunity fund if there's a resource available or something like that, to go ahead and be able to capitalize on it. So I guess we have multiple avenues, but I guess the short answer is yes, we could probably do something with that.
Yeah, Andrew, how are we going to harvest these shells?
These shells are primarily caught with basically a very large ordinary oyster dredge with a dump bag on it.
Okay.
So it's like a heavy built crab dredge, even bigger than that. I think we tubbed them at over 55 bushels per lick with it. So it's a pretty efficient way of doing it. You can get about 1,500 to a little bit more than that per load on this.
Okay.
So it goes pretty well.
This 85 is, in addition to the 60, makes it 145, is that right?
The 30,000 of that's already been planted, so it'll be 30,000 on top of this is what we'll have on land available in the spring. Yeah, so 115.
She was there last year too.
And again, this is up to that amount, so we'll kind of see on cost and stockpile what makes sense economically and have it ready to go. But I think this would give us enough flexibility to keep the shell pile building up over there as an additional tool.
Lee?
Andrew, on those seaside shells, are they typically thin shelled, like a triploid?
They vary, so I mean they're a little bit variable. They tend to be longer. Some of them can be thicker, some of them can be thinner. They're not as uniform as what we get from a shucking house, for example, or from the shell dredge that sorts them. So there's a little bit more variety in them.
I was just curious on, durability of them and how much with what you've put overboard already, have you seen a big loss and what you put there and what you actually put overboard?
Most of these areas have been done on the seaside, and it's very high recruitment. So, I mean, what's gone out has been completely covered up and spat almost immediately. The sites that we've done out of Bayford and Nassau-Waddocks Creek, you know, they're doing really well, but we haven't done the same level of Patentong survey in a lot of these areas just because of the shallow water nature of them yet. But we've been using on the seaside very successfully for 30 years, and it works pretty well to catch seaside oysters. And from what we've seen so far over the last 3 or 4 years, it's been working well on the bayside as well. But again, they're a little more variable. Sometimes they look like seaside oysters more so, but there are some really big shells mixed in there, and then some smaller ones as well.
Yeah, for some reason, I was thinking they were more thin shell, like a triplet oyster.
They're not like the big Gulf oysters that you'd see or the big Shuck and House ones over there. They are a little bit more longer than they are sort of thicker and rounder.
Thank you.
Oh, and I meant to mention, hi, Mike Shackelford joined us quite a bit ago from Gloucester, so thank you, glad you could be here. Just wanted to state that for the record. And any other questions about revision requests?
All right, if anyone wants to make a motion, they can, but if not, we can carry this to the commission with sort of unanimous consent that it's a good idea, but if there's any other action on this, I'm glad to hear it, or questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Refresh my memory, where are we budget-wise as far as what has been spent?
We spent less than that 1.5 in total million, and I don't have the numbers right offhand, but the majority of that has been carryover funds, so very little of the July 1st funding has been spent at all. So we're well within that, what was discussed at the SMAC approval of the revised plan there.
Carry on.
All right, you ready for the main event there?
And next agenda item, the 2026-2027 public oyster harvest season. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, so you should have in front of you in your packet there a copy of the season that we sort of discussed and kind of put together at the last SMAC meeting. I'll go through a very quick background information. I have a lot of additional backup slides that hopefully anticipate any questions that come up. But I just wanted to put that out there again to take a look at and then get the committee's input. We all saw this last time, but public harvest and private harvest, long term, a little bit shorter term. Again, the harvest on public ground was down a little bit last year, but that's primarily related to market conditions and not the condition of the resource. There were some questions about Maryland and Virginia harvest, and just so you have it and can see it, this is Virginia public harvest, Virginia private harvest, and Maryland public harvest over that same time period. Virginia public ground is in blue, private is in that reddish color, and then Maryland public harvest is in green. And you can see, generally speaking, they kind of track up and down together. We're the same bay, and a lot of the folks are sort of collectively participating in the same fishery, whether it's Virginia buyers, Maryland buyers. There's some back and forth, and again, those tend to track largely up and down together. This is just to have there, but this is a public and private fishery in Virginia just for a single year, 2025 year, and it's self-explanatory to anyone who's in the fishery year-round, but almost all the oysters in the summertime come from private ground, and almost all the oysters in the wintertime come from public ground, but there's a little bit more overlap, obviously, in the wintertime because both areas are open and both areas are closed, or the public ground is closed in the summer. That kind of gives you what the harvest looks like seasonally in terms of where your oysters are coming from. You've seen this before, but generally speaking, oyster populations have been tracking up, and brown shell volume, which is that brown bar on the bottom, has been gradually increasing, but getting very close to that 10-liter target that we have, where spat sets and there's just physically enough room to get there. It has tracked down just a tick over the last 3 or 4 years, but is still above that 5-liter threshold and pretty close to 8 liters. If we need at any point to get into really specifics of populations in areas or harvest areas, this is a link to VIMS and VMRC, mostly VIMS' new Vasara tool that can really dial in and show us a lot of good information. Again, I've given you some seasons past to look at. Last year's season we have handy if we need it. The biggest thing from last year that we were considering changing is sort of shortening the season out of a conservation measure potentially, with the concerns about our abilities to replenish some of these areas. This was the draft that we used for discussion purposes last time around, and this should be the copy of the season that we discussed and sort of talked about and kind of put out collectively at the last meeting there. Again, sort of the intent that I think has worked well with this committee's input over the years has been trying to focus on spreading effort out by gear type and harvest area as well as season, so that we don't have that focused effort that we saw in some of those times when the resource was going in the wrong direction. So we've done pretty well at points, some seasons better than others, and some of that's market conditions of keeping the sort of major fleets split up between the James River, the Rappahannock River, the Eastern Shore group, and then sort of the other smaller areas taking a big chunk of that as well as splitting up the fishery to varying degrees over the years between hand tongs, patent tongs, scrapes, and dredges. So again, that's sort of what has worked well, combined with replenishment and rotations, is sort of keeping things split up and spread out. But again, I'll stop there, and I think there's been some sort of comments and stuff coming in that there might be some additional things to consider with this. I've got an Excel sheet ready to go, but we can stop there and I can answer any questions specifically before we get started, or just open it up for committee input and discussion.
Andrew, without you having to go back, I'm sure you have it in your mind, but that Maryland number, that green, that was all public?
Correct, yeah.
And what do we know how they replenish to be able to harvest those sorts of numbers without fossil shell?
Their replenishment effort, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but their gear types and their harvest areas are a little bit more spread out than ours. So their power dredge fishery accounts for roughly 50% of their harvest each year, and then hand tongs, patent tongs, divers, and sail dredging covers roughly the 50%, and their whole area is opened up. They have a much more limited amount of private ground fishery. So that's the best answer I can give you, is they sort of manage it differently, and it's a much larger area, and only about 100,000 or so Maryland bushels comes off of their private ground versus the 300 or so thousand that we get every year.
Yeah, I think one thing that helps too is they have a higher limit on all the boats, where you be dredging, patent tonging, hand tonging, and whatever. I think that does make some difference.
And I will say, not to go back, I did correct, just for any Marylanders watching here that go, those numbers aren't right, is I made their bushel bigger. So I actually decreased the number of Maryland bushels to give you an apples to apples comparison here. So this is the Maryland bushel numbers there are corrected to be our 3,000 cubic inch bushel. So sorry, Maryland, your numbers are going to look a little bit off here. I took a little bit of liberty with that. But again, you can see our public numbers were pretty close. And again, their fishery is a little more open than ours. So when it's good, more people can get into it. And then as it's less good, more people kind of get out. So that you see those larger fluctuations. And that's sort of what my understanding of how their fishery is it's much more similar to some of our upper areas, that if they get a good spat set, they can work on that for a longer period of time. And they have a little bit more of these up and down swings, whereas our harvest is more consistent and established by season lengths and harvest restrictions. Theirs is a little more driven by the actual condition of the resource and then market conditions, obviously.
I guess the point I was trying to, or the thought I was trying to get my mind around is how you support 675,000 bushel harvest and the replenishment around that. Obviously, somewhere between that 400,000 and coming back down to where it's at now, that was a lot of oysters. Just trying to, I mean, they've got to do something to replenish to be able to produce those numbers, and with the situation we're in, trying to.
Got a comment from Lee?
Yeah, and to touch on Tommy's question there, they buy a lot of house shell. A lot of house shell goes on the bottom up there. And I was gonna save this for new business, but I'll go ahead and touch on it now. There's three numbers right there, there's three lines right there disturb me, especially in the situation that we're in. Our blue line, the Virginia Public Fishery, is good right now, but this is the first year that we have not planted many shells. The private fishery in Virginia is steady planting house shell every year. Maryland is planting a lot of house shell. We have no shell. We've been planting, you know, the fossil shell, but now we have no dredge. We don't have a dredge in the foreseeable future. I've got the economic impact study for Virginia seafood in front of me, and along with FIM's aquaculture. As we all know, the Virginia seafood industry supports $1.27 billion in the state economy. 127 million of that is from oysters. We've got to find something to be able to plant back to maintain. Like I said, I was going to bring this up in new business, but I'll put that there for right now, and then maybe we can reach back around and touch on that under new business.
Thank you, Lee.
I have a question.
Sure.
The Potomac tributaries, is that the Nominee River, and that's basically it?
No, I wanted to add to that, you know, after that last meeting, kind of went back and looked at things and got a call from a local harvester up there, and spoke to Lee about it as well. That in addition to that, we planted the Cone River this last year, so the Yacomico would be scheduled to be open there. And then additionally to what you're seeing there, I added that area. Nassawadox Creek is another area there on the seaside eastern shore. But for the Potomac tributaries, it'd be Nominee, the Yacomico, with the Cone being closed this year since we just put hand tong seed there last year.
Yeah, if I can make a few comments here to the committee and see how their feelings are. I'll start at the James River. I don't know a lot about the James. I've never worked down there. Maybe Ben, I don't know if you are okay with the schedule that you see there. Mike, I know you work down there also. But I would like to comment on the Rappahannock. I'm very concerned about the whole Rappahannock fleet going into Area 6 on October the 15th. Yeah, my feelings are, and I work in this fishery also, if you go in there with 40, 50, 60 boats, I mean, you're not going to get 2 months of work there, I can tell you that. I mean, even though we say the oyster survey turned out good there, you know, I don't know how many of them are dead, but I really think we need to supplement Area 6 with Area 1. I think we need to do, we need to split the patent tong season. This is my thoughts, and maybe the committee can look at it. If we take Area 1 and open it for 2 weeks in October for hand scrape and the month of November, leave it patent tonging for December, January, and February. And I guess my question to you, Andrew, would be, how many bushels of shells did we replenish area one with, and what year did we do that?
I think the last time we did a little bit there in 2018 or 19 offhand. The last time it was really open there. We're usually putting twice as many bushels back, at least, that are coming out of there. So it's probably at least 2 barges, so probably close to 100,000 bushels of shell.
Okay.
And
So
again,
after we hand scraped it, we did replant, since it was open
well,
for
since
hand
those 2
scrape,
weeks
right?
there, we didn't have to plant that heavily, but we did a full barge of shell there went there, so it's probably in that 60,000 bushel range.
Okay. So is it your feelings that we have money to be able to replenish if we go into hand scrape this area for a month and a half, do we have money left over, carryover, to be able to replenish this area? I know that's the biggest concern is, are we gonna be able to keep it up?
It's not so much the money, it's the shell availability. So it depends on what other areas are in need and what it is there. So I think one of the things that we shifted when Area 1 switched over to Pat and Tong for close to 2 full rotations is all of those shells that were going into Area 1 got planted in Area 7, Area 8, and some of them over in some of these new areas. So that's what we did with the same amount of shells, is they didn't need to go to these areas anymore. If you open it back up to hand scrape, it depends. Depends on how many boats are there and what the survey shows. So if 40 boats went there and the Pat and Tongers couldn't work there afterwards and they all went to the other areas, then it would definitely need replenishment, and that would be shells that we either don't have or weren't going someplace else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the $64 question. We don't know how many boats are going to Area 6 and how many would go to Area 1 if we did pursue this opening. That's the question, and I certainly can't answer it, but I just throw it out there at the committee, see how everybody else feels about it. I really think we need to, with the James River opening mid-October, I think we need that to supplement Area 6. So that's my thoughts on it.
Ben?
Since you had your Versaris tool up there, what's the brown shell volume on Area 1?
The markets have been steady, but the brown shell has come down, but I can pull that up there if you'd like to sort of see. And it's
been closed for 2 years, right? Yeah.
split my screens here right quick so that I'm not trying to drive from 2 places at once. Go for it there, all right. So I have this selected as brown shell right now. Here, let me go to 2025. So this is brown shell right now in some of these areas. In 2025, you can see some of the areas are sort of below that 5 liter threshold here. Let me see if I can pull up the legend there. It's off to this side. So 10 to 15 is sort of in the green there, and 5 to 10 is where we'd usually target it for replenishment. So this is based on that 2025 survey. And again, you can see that most of these areas are doing pretty well after that replenishment. Some of the areas that were had the most effort during that 2-week scrape season, even with some targeted replenishment, are still not above that 10 target there. These are the two sort of areas that we replenished that were most in need in addition to that. But again, this is the whole Rappahannock. I'll zoom out and you can kind of see where we are brown shell wise after seasons that we've had in the condition of the resource there. So some of the areas are over that 10-liter volume in brown shell right now this season. Some of them are less than that.
Do you have market oyster survey, Andrew?
Yep. The markets, and again, this is not necessarily marketable oysters, but oysters that are over 76 millimeters there. This area does have, as do all areas in the Rappahannock, pretty high density of market oysters right now.
Mm-hmm.
So over that 6 to 12, and in some cases over that 12, and generally at 12 oysters per square meter, that's for Pat and Tong Lick, you're getting 12 market oysters or more, and that's at a level where even hand tongs can make it work. The brown shell volume is a concern, and this is, again, the whole average. Some of those individual reefs are a little bit lower than the whole average. Again, some of those areas that had some of the higher effort there, Butler's Hole there, and Broad Creek, and they're right out of Deltaville.
Okay, I mean, I know it's a huge area. It's probably, well, maybe not the biggest areas. 7 and 8 is probably equal size or bigger, but it is an area that could eliminate some of the traffic jams up in Area 6, you know. So just a thought I had. Nobody. I mean, from a market standpoint, I mean, how does everybody feel about that? Okay, I guess.
JC,
Yeah, Rich.
how much effort do you think is gonna happen that time of year with people crabbing and at home with the menhaden industry?
Well,
All them guys are gonna be
I mean, that's something I can't answer. I know it will be some people crabbing, yeah, but I really don't know, you know, how much effort, how many of those guys would quit crabbing. Depends on the price.
Depends on the market.
Yeah, depends on the market. I mean, certainly the oysters got to be bought. If they're poor, are they going to buy them or they're not going to buy them? You know, I mean, but just a thought. I mean, I can see what's going to happen up in 6. I mean, but it's the same situation up there. It's going to it'll be a lot of crab pots there too, and a lot of people will be crabbing, I think. Yeah.
I mean, not to be argumentative, but I don't see where this is any different than we would do in a normal rotation. We would have one area open in the Rappahannock for starting and then one on the backside. So,
Just six being so small, you know, that was my concern.
If I heard staff right last time, I don't think this is the same Area 6 that we've known in the past.
That's correct. I mean, it has benefited from both a little bit of seed planting, increased replenishment, and then 2 record-setting spat sets up there. So and again, those are just the areas that we survey, and so there's likely some areas off those rocks that have come back a lot. And then on your questions about 7 and 8, I mean, the areas that we survey up there are pretty big, but the actual amount of historic shell bottom in 7 and 8 is probably double. Any one of those areas has probably twice as much shell bottom as any of the other 6 rotation areas up there. So those really are much bigger areas, particularly with the spat sets that we've seen up there.
So you still want to see, you have hand scrape for 2 weeks in February, last 2 weeks in February in Area 1. That's still
I think that's
what
what,
everybody wants to see.
the committee was discussing, sort of that, and again, I mean, you've pat and tong there, it sort of depends. Coming behind a hand scrape can be okay, depending on
Yeah.
which area, but if the scrapes have been on top of that area is probably not gonna be pat and tongable, so it depends on, like, you could go to Broad Creek if the hand scrapes weren't on Broad Creek, or you go to Butler's if they weren't, but if everyone was on Broad Creek and then you came behind them with a pat and tong, it might not work, so it depends, I guess, on that, how focused the effort is in these areas.
Okay.
With that being, with what JC said, and the input on it, I could go either way on it. I think the market would probably dictate that, and logistics would probably dictate that. I do have a question on Area 7 patent tonging and the splitting up of 7 and 8. That's a logistical nightmare, working a month, let's see. Working a month, then going to another place, and then going back to the two places for a half of the month. It's hard on the boats, finding somewhere to tie up. You're moving back and forth. It's hard on the market, moving forklifts, moving conveyors back and forth. Would staff have any issue with combining that, like doing a month and a half on 7 and a month and a half on 8 straight, instead of splitting it up like it is now?
I guess I was kind of surprised. Are you buying oysters in different places between 7 and 8? I mean, I guess it kind of depends, but 6, 7, and 8 are all kind of close to each other up there. I know it's about 12 miles from the top of 6 to the top of Radico, which is a little bit of a run, but
You have a lot of small boats up there, and that can be a rough place on a Northwestern.
no, understood.
I know, like on 7, we'll go down with Kellums and Parcells and buy on at Greenville Creek. And then when 8 opens, we go up to, Radical Creek. So,
Okay.
Long reach.
that's a long run. I mean,
Yeah,
most of
12
my
miles
boats,
with the wind the wrong direction in a small boat is
most
not
of
pleasant. Yeah.
most of the boats that I buy from couldn't do it. I mean, I got several small skiffs. But it just, from bouncing back and forth and having people have to pay a slip rent in one place and, moving forklifts, moving in and out of places, that's just, staff would have a problem with that. I think that would
Can I
clean things up. That would,
Can I add to that?
sure.
So last year, I think we moved the most back and forth ever. It is a pain and a nightmare and costly. So I agree with you, like moving back and forth and this and that, especially in a smaller boat is, I mean, it sounds like it'd be easy because just put it on the trailer and go, but it is a bit of a pain.
I think it's relatively equivalent. I think the one benefit to the resources potentially, it kind of unfocuses that harvest effort there for a little while and gives things a chance to kind of recover. And you pull up your dredge buoy, maybe you go back to a different spot the next month, but I think that's potentially negligible depending on the effort. But that's sort of the intent, is to spread things out a little bit, give things a little bit of a rest, and then come back a couple weeks later. I think we've done that before, and we've seen Area 7 and 8 be able to be worked outside of a rotation, kind of bouncing around like that. And I'm not saying it wouldn't work to change it up, but it has worked kind of to have these short seasons, and then come back to an area, and the resources hasn't been really heavily impacted even with the scrape. So I'm not saying it would or it wouldn't be, but doing it the way we have been, which is kind of these jump around, has seemed to be worked pretty well. And I think that had been a recommendation of the committee in the past about, working an area for a couple of weeks and you let it rest and you come back, is my understanding similar to how some people work private ground. So that was one of the recommendations that caused that to come into place in the first place. But again, we'd be glad to take the committee's recommendation and present that to commission. Definitely appreciate the discussion and input.
I understand what you're saying, but in my thought process is you have the same amount of time period, so you're not having any more effort, and we don't use buoys anymore. Everybody's got a GPS. You put a buoy down, they coming to you. So that doesn't happen up here anymore as far as that goes. So when you go back, that same mark is still there.
Fair point.
When you come back, whether you were gone for 2 weeks or not.
No, We gotta make everyone delete the GPS waypoints before they leave there.
Yeah. Good luck with
That's
that.
what I was gonna say.
But I do understand, I haven't been over on the Rapid Pass for a couple of years, but I get it, having to move your boat back and forth, and as far as from industry side as well, if the effort's not gonna be anymore. And I understand what you mean about letting the bottom settle, but a lot of guys, if they're on a hot lick, when they leave on December 31st, when they come back on February 1st, they're going right back to that same number. So I don't know about if that really helps it as much, a whole lot anymore.
No, fair point.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Lee.
Also, if we're talking about this as a blanket and not just area by area, I've had a couple of people reach out to me on Deep Rock. And just pat and tongue, and I said, I've never pat and tongue, never been down there, so I don't know this to be fact, but everybody says it seems like things are silting over down there, so I would like to see, and this is coming from some pat and tongers, I'd like to see it dredged for 15 days at some point in time during this year, just to get things back up to the top, fluff it up a little bit, and go from there. But I'm speaking for my constituents, I guess. on that.
Yeah. Well, I guess, things do shift around out there a little bit. I think we've seen in the survey that there's some areas that may have sedimented over, and there's other areas that are doing really well. And I guess if you're dredging on an area that's sedimented over, you're not catching any oysters. So you're not really doing it to fluff it up. You'd be going to the area where the oysters are good, would be my thinking. And again, I guess we did that experiment with Deep Rock, and it took it 7 years to recover without replenishment to where the oyster resource was back to where it was before it had been opened to dredging. So when we opened it up to dredging, I don't remember the exact year, but it was 6 or 7 years after that until the resource was back to sort of where it was without intensive replenishment there. So 2 weeks might be okay, but that would again depend on effort and where they were. And I'm not sure. I think we've done experiments on fluffing areas up with dredges, and based on my recollection of reading those, it doesn't have much good, particularly if you're doing it in the middle of winter rather than right before spring when the spatter's setting. I think Vims is here if there's any specific comments on whether that would be effective, but generally speaking, if you do it during the public season, any good that you did is sort of negated by the time the spatter there and things are growing again.
Madam Chair. Andrew, are you speaking of the dredging that was done about late 90s, early 2000s?
It was early 2000s.
I mean, the intent of that was to clean, to get everything off of that, to come back behind it. I think if Dan Dyes is still on the phone, they struggled to find a group of guys to do that. So again, I know it sounds argumentative, but I don't know if that's a fair analogy to what Lee's talking about, is we intensively dredged that to clean it up for the next replenishment effort in a time when everything down there was dying, so.
Yeah, and I've worked Deep Rock, I've pat and tongue there, certainly haven't dredged there, but it's a very difficult place to use a hand scrape. It's a lot of pat and tongues on the bottom there, I can tell you that, I know that from experience. And if you go there, if you work 2 weeks and don't lose oyster dredge, you're gonna be lucky, I can tell you that, so. But I'm not in favor of it, I just have to see, but I'd like to see it remain as it is.
I think with the early 2000s thing, what I can remember, and Tommy's got a better memory than I do, but it was supposed to be open up for dredging, and then it got turned over in an emergency meeting for Pat Tonging, and the Pat Tongers couldn't make a living at it at that time, and we were able to go down there and make a few weeks work. What you do with it now, it really has no bearing on me one way or the other. But I think that was a different time and a different era to be saying that that dredging done all that damage to it. back in that time. That was a whole different, that was, as an old timer here used to say, that was oyster dredging. It's not like we got it now with, with oysters out the wazoo.
No, and just to correct things, I mean, I was just basing that based on brown shell volume prior to it being dredged, and then 6-7 years, I believe, before that brown shell volume got back to that level. So again, it's a different resource today, but that's just a comment on the data there, not necessarily, that's just what it shows.
I was just asked to bring it up, and I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah. 2 weeks in February.
Yeah, we had a, oh, go ahead, Rich.
Well, maybe you guys are discussing what I was gonna ask, but, I agree with Monica and Lee about moving. Just for us in the industry, it's a hassle too, and it's even more for them. But what you were talking about, Lee, is, having 7 going all the way till mid-January, keeping it straight for
Yes.
a month and a half, and then starting 8 in mid-January and going all the way to the end of February?
Yes.
And we're gonna still have, Area 1, the end of February? The last 2 weeks, am I correct? I don't know, I'm bringing this up for discussion, because I've had some people ask me too, but what does staff and this committee think about having hand scraping Area 1 for February, the whole month?
I think that's something we can discuss, but again, it's if there's 40 boats there for 2 weeks or 20 boats there for a month, it's the same, but it really depends on the effort, what the impact would be. But again, we know based on the data that when Area 1 is open to hand scrape for 2 weeks, it needs replenishment, based on shell volume. So that's not really an opinion, it's just based on the Pat Tong survey data. So likely your chances of it needing more replenishment would be higher if it's open longer. So those are the sort of concerns that we'd have there. But again, if that takes effort off other areas, then maybe those areas are less in need of replenishment. So it really depends on where that effort is. And I guess it depends on if Area 1 overlaps with Area 6 and that evenly splits folks. That's very different than having Area 1 as a standalone area and everything else in the Rappahannock closed, even if it's just a 2-week season.
I'm just bringing it up for discussion and what you thought about, shell volume.
Oh, Corey?
For those 2 weeks, correct me if I'm wrong, when we had that on Area 1 last time, that was a standalone, I think James River, but there was nothing else. If you do it for the month of February, you got a fleet that's gonna be working in Blackberry, and I don't think maybe a handful of them would leave and go to Area 1, but most of them would stay there. You also still got the option up the river. I don't think you're gonna see the effort that you saw when we had that standalone 2-week season. Because I believe that was like the 1st of March when we did that, is that correct? Or it was towards the end of the season when nothing else was available.
I think it was first 2 weeks
Up
of
that
March.
way, so I don't think you're gonna see the effort to have to put the amount of replenishment on it as what you did the last time it was open for scraping. So I'm for opening that for the month of February to help spread the fleet out from there, 8 and possibly maybe a couple from the Great Wacomico area.
And then Tommy?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't market oysters count in the brown shell volume?
They do, yes.
So it would make sense that it declines after harvest.
Yes, it does, yeah.
So, I mean,
It's not
you
just
throw it out
market
there like the
oysters.
resources being depleted by shell being gone, but if you're taking oysters, that's the purpose of the season and the harvest, and they're only gonna be market oysters for so long before they're true brown shell with their mouth open. So capturing the resource at an optimal time is not a detriment.
If I guess the whether or not the shell is live or dead, you need a certain amount of shell for the oysters to exist. So
I understand that.
It really depends, but you're correct that it does. Yep,
But
it
the
is
whole
counted
purpose
on.
of this is to build and grow a market oyster. And leaving him there to sit is, obviously, yes, you need some for spawning purposes, some for all the rest, and you can't stay at it long enough to catch the last one. You can't starve that long. But if he's there and there's a market for him, then leaving him there to keep a number of brown shell on the paper is, in my opinion, maybe not the best use of that resource.
Is the Bassar still up?
Yep. I think it is. Well, I closed it down, actually.
So, the one thing I saw on that, you made reference to Butler's Hole. There was very little effort in that 2-week season there, and I remember specifically Adam and I having a conversation that we were both shocked at the limited effort that we had during that season. We were expecting it to be 40 or 50 boats, and crabbing had started, and my recollection, it was a pretty small fleet for what we were expecting, and not the largest of harvest. I don't think the numbers, but we would, obviously we've got mandatory reporting to support that, but I'm shocked to see Butler's Hole and some of these places that the brown shell volume has depleted with essentially no effort at all.
I'm not sure the exact effort, but I think it was in that 40 or so boat range on many days out there, but I couldn't say specifically where they were. And some of those areas, like Butler's Hole, I believe, hadn't been targeted for replenishment in the past due to their size, so they may have already been sort of getting worked down over not being replenished.
And they're not targeted over quality either, so.
Well, and I can tell you one thing, Tommy, it was hit pretty hard, Patton Tongue, before that. Everybody, as soon as the wind comes northeast, northwest, everybody goes to the other side of the river, and that's where they stay. They work there and then they come back. If we get a pretty day, they would work off of Broad Creek, but for the majority in bad weather, we would go over there. So that's probably why it wasn't a lot.
That makes
not a real
sense.
big
I
area,
guess,
you know. And, yeah.
the brown shell volume wasn't depleted over 2 weeks of hand scraping.
Right.
No, not in that area. I think most of the hand scrape fleet was on that Broad Creek side, is where you saw most of the people working.
Sturgeon down, yeah, that was, and the spike.
And again, I mean, Patton Tongs, any gear, as to Ben's point, you're removing live oysters. That's just the nature of the fishery. So eventually, if you keep removing them from a small area, you eventually remove most of the brown shell, because most of what's actually exposed on an oyster reef is live oysters. So that's just kind of how they work. So by the nature of the fishery, you're catching what you need to be dependent on the next year for the most part. It's just how it is.
One thing, to just slipping off of Area 1 for a minute, I have had a couple of patent tongers that have looked at this, that asked about the possibility of the Chesapeake Bay area and the Deep Rock area being open in March due to better market conditions and a little bit of an experimental element to the Chesapeake Bay area, that it's not like we've got traditional areas that you're just going to. So I have no strong feelings, but to Lee's earlier point, I'm just asking for constituency.
I think I'm trying to capture these. What was that, just so I can try putting it on the chart there for it while it's fresh in your mind? You were talking about areas 6 and 7, the months there. I was just trying to put that, and I missed the exact dates. You were talking for, oh, excuse me, 7 and 8, yeah. What was that?
I guess it would close 7 on January 15th, would be a Friday.
Okay. Or just half a month, so it'd be open from December through the middle of that. And then, is there any overlap from January 1st in Area 7 there, or kind of stretch them all the way out that whole month of February?
That's 8 you're talking about.
Or area
It'd be the 15th through the 26th of February is
for Area 7?
for Area 8.
Okay.
If you went, well, whichever one you went to first.
Is there any preference on which one goes first? I mean, Area
You
8
feel better about overlap? I would.
Yeah, I mean, especially towards the end of that month, I mean, especially in Area 7 and 8, I mean, what I have just by happen chance right here on this chart was December 1st to the 15th for Area 8, and then January 1st to February 14th, 15th, 28 days. For Area 7, sort of that overlap with 2 weeks right in the middle, so when Area 8, the last 2 weeks, it overlaps with Area 7, but having them condensed like that.
Lee, would
Repeat
that
that one
still
more time.
accomplish what you're looking,
Yeah, I
or
think-
Monica?
I just want you to repeat it. It was so fast I didn't
Okay.
catch the dates.
Let me go ahead and pull this up here so we can talk about the same thing here. Hold on. Got too many things going at once here. There's Bizarra. Bizarra was hiding on the other screen. That's where it was. All right. Yeah, there we go. I can make that a little bit bigger if you want.
Okay, got it.
That Area 8 would go,
This has got that.
okay, yeah, okay, we're good.
And I was starting to capture the March season there, so this is March right here.
Okay.
That is.
Three,
He's moving what they were suggesting right now.
Okay. You got Area 6 open the whole month of February?
That was, I think, what we just talked about a little bit there is,
Yeah, I think so.
oh no, that was Area 1 the whole month there. I can shorten that up.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think you'll have to worry about Area 6 in February. It won't be nothing that bad.
And to that point,
There we go.
do we want to look somewhere other than 6 for February? So that's not, I mean, it's already been open for 6 weeks as, it's not standalone, but it's standalone on the Rappahannock for the most part. There's Patton come November, but there's nothing up in the northern area for scraping. It's either the James River or Area 6. Do we want to look somewhere else?
And we have Blackberry open then, in February.
Yeah, I mean, you have Blackberry in Area 1, but I'm just wondering, that's, if you had, well, if you only got it for half the month, that's still 8 weeks on 6 that it's available, where nothing else has more than 6 weeks, and you have some overlap on 7 and 8.
Well, I guess, just thinking off the cuff here is, this would really split things up. I mean, if you had 6, 7, and 1 open, those 2 weeks, that would be, assuming boats didn't all go to one area there, which they might well, that gives folks some options there, but.
No, you're right. You're
and
right.
October, hopefully crabbing is phenomenal in October, and we have just the right amount of oysters to keep the market happy.
what's everybody's thoughts on Patton Area 7? And I guess that would be November. Anybody have any input on that?
See question there. What do you, is it?
I don't think you're gonna get anybody. I mean, leave it on there, but I don't think anybody's gonna do it.
The last time we did that, they went for half a day and rushed back to change gear types.
Yeah.
It's not a Patton area.
Nah,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think some of those areas on the edges might work out. I think a few boats, but most of them did go back to dredging. But it's a little better than I think it was in terms of market density than it was. I guess we did that 2019, 2018. So that was prior to the spat set that it's gotten here recently. but again, it's a shallower area too, so. And I guess one of the things that has shifted is, we were 2021, 2020, 2022, we were getting 20, almost 30,000 bushels of Patentong oysters having these areas open like this in the Rappahannock. And this last season, primarily market and everything else going on, that's down to just a few thousand. And that's mostly just because I think Deep Rock and that Bay area were the only areas open. So when these areas in the Rappahannock were open, that was upwards of 20,000 bushels a year coming out of those areas with the Patentongs. So that's changed, but that's what the level of effort you were getting when these areas, similar seasons to this, were open, is that about that 20 to 30,000 bushels was coming out of those areas.
So,
Lee, then.
go ahead.
Then Rich.
Dan, what are your thoughts on Tangier? That's everything we talked about last time, I think. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I wasn't to the last meeting. To what I understand, the season is the 3-month season, right? From December through the end of February on the management areas. Am I right on that?
Yep, that's correct, with Area 11 in the Pocomoke open to Hands Creek for the last 2 weeks in February.
Well, I would like to, there's not that many people does it, but there's a few. I would like to ask for 2 weeks on Johnson's, the last 2 weeks of November. You've only got a handful here that does it, and you're not going to get that many from the Eastern Shore doing it. I think, I think everybody will primarily keep their minds on crabbing. But, the market, Johnson's was open last year, but the market, as bad as the market was on that side, it was 10 times worse on this side. And Johnson's got worked very, very little, and it's a ton of oysters on it, a ton of strike. It's a very healthy looking rock. And I think at the most, I think 8-10 boats is going to be the most that you would see on that for those last 2 weeks of November. And it's a time that there is a possibility that they'll sell. And there's some people that doesn't crab, and there's some people that relies on oystering. And I think the last 2 weeks of that of November would be I don't think it would do a whole lot of damage because of the boats that wouldn't be on it, but it would help out the ones that would want to go dredging. If you can sell an oyster, it's probably going to be at that time of year.
And that's just that one area there, so that would be kind of opening that up out of rotation to dredge last 2 weeks in November? Okay.
Yep.
And again, it's the same thing before. It depends on effort. I think Johnson's definitely last year and years before had less effort, but market conditions and dredges, and if there's 40 boats, it's more of a problem. If there's as many as there were last year, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but it's hard. Maybe we can predict the future that far ahead.
Or I know of 1 or 2 people that's bulked up under crab pots this fall based on what last winter was, and you're not going to see 40 boats. For one thing, you're not going to see 40 boats because of where Johnson's is, where the location is. It's not an easy place to work. It's down there by the Tangier Lake. It's one of the roughest places. It is the roughest place that we work. So it's not like you're going to have a ton of little boats coming over that way, and I just don't think it would. I don't think it's going to hurt it.
My trick for predicting weather out there is to look at the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel rather than anything forecast for the regular bay. It's closer.
Yeah.
I I think I captured that. I'll put this, I'm just trying to capture any changes and I'll put it back up. Once I get there, it's a little easier for me to work with, the closed screen here. And I have Nassau Creek there, just so you know, Dan, that area out of Bayford that we planted, I think that area I have, just for your folks over there, since Don's not around, have that for 3 months for the first time in a long time there, October through December. But again, you're probably not putting a pair of hand tongs in the boat and coming all the way into Bayford, but.
No, if I got to sleep up in the cabin, I'm probably not going.
I think I've got everything captured on this here that we talked about. If you want me to put it up there again, a second, just making some edits. Are there any other discussion on this? Here, let me put it up there again. I gotta walk through it.
I think Rich has a comment.
Yeah. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, if we got, in the 1st of February, first 2 weeks, we got 4 areas open, Blackberry, Area 1 wrap, Area 7 wrap, Area 6 wrap.
And the James.
Last 2 weeks, we have 2 areas, Blackberry and Area 1.
And the James, yep.
And, well, I'm talking about up, upriver there, up the bay. Is that okay by you guys at Waterman? I mean, Monica, or them? I just want to make sure.
I mean, I see your point, Rich, and it wouldn't hurt my feelings to see 6 pushed out to the second half of February where you have 3 in 3 areas.
Yeah, we have 3 open the first half and 3 open the second half.
Because six is gonna, like JC said, is hopefully, you got, everything looks a whole lot better than what we've been seeing there in the past. But whichever your effort is in October and November is gonna determine whether anybody goes back there or not. But I think to have the option to spread it in 3 areas for the entire month instead of 4 and then 2 would be better.
I agree.
Like that there?
Yeah, I think it'll be a savings for Blackberry because I think you would be shocked at the number of boats in Blackberry that last 2 weeks if you didn't have some support.
We had that happen years ago. We don't want it to happen again.
Yeah,
We didn't have Blackberry for about 2 or 3 years after that.
That's right.
And I think I got that captured with that patent tong there in March for just the Bay areas, full month there. I do think that, yeah, I mean, having these areas split up and having boats in more areas has been working well. And again, we'll kind of I'll have to regroup and think about this and discuss it and sort of see if there's any concerns. But definitely we'll be carrying this forward as a SMAC recommendation, pending any changes in the vote here for this August commission meeting. And again, we won't be having that season start till October 1st. So if there's anything wild happens between now and then, there is an opportunity for emergency regulation. But let's hope that nothing too wild happens there.
Hey, Mike.
I want to get on this about this, the harvest time. Is that set for the Shaft Tongue at 12 noon? That's the whole,
For Shaft Tongan, it's 2 o'clock like it always has been.
okay, because you got down here the harvest, you mean,
So anything,
Only where you see the asterisk beside it, like,
okay,
yeah,
see how hand tone don't have the asterisk beside it.
okay, all right. I just want to make sure on that. I was saying, because like I said, Shaft Tongue, it's not like dredging. You're standing at the bottom of the boat. You really need 3 o'clock to give people some time to work. Because you're bed in the morning, you got to work with the tide.
yeah. Take a little break every now and again too.
But, I mean, and that's another question I got. We need to get straight on these basket meshes. Some people, if I come what I feel is decent to sell the man, I feel that he needs to get what he's paying for. Okay, then somebody else come along, it's got way, way more in there. But I'm gonna get punished just for feeling that I feel what I should put in there. That needs to be something that needs to be straightened out.
Well, I guess, I think law enforcement is here if they want to comment on it, but,
Yeah, I mean,
level full is the law for both buying and
Yeah.
selling, so.
but like I said, there's some is piled up, the handle's busting off, then you come to the dock, a few over top of it. Well, you coming out again, I'm gonna give you a ticket. So, I mean, you need it, that puts them in a bad place. We need to be straight here so people know what's going on.
Well, I think we need to establish a weight, what we need, you know, instead of level basket. That seems to be what some of the buyers are asking, is a lot more weight.
I don't think you can do weight. And I've worked, a few years back, I remember working Area 4 and working inshore and then going on that offshore bar, and they were just as full as they were, and they felt light as a feather compared to other ones, just from shell density and the meats. I mean, I don't think weight,
Yeah, the
you
weight
guys
is-
that buy know more than I do, but it does not seem like to me that,
Let's get Lee.
that weight would do it.
I'd like to ask law enforcement for the definition of what, you know, what's legal and what's not. How,
We have to go by what the regulation of the code tells us.
okay,
So it's right across the top.
level,
You know, we're not gonna be like measuring it, but what Mike was saying, where it's boiled over, those are the ones that we've got to enforce.
okay.
Yeah, so it's an equal right across the top.
That was my interpretation of it, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
And is that correct that that's a violation on both the buyer and the harvester?
The problem with the buyer is, once it gets in the truck, you know, how do we know who got there? It's difficult to enforce the buyer. We're almost stuck with dealing with the boats individually. You know, and what do we do when they dump it in the truck? So,
Some buyers is putting, I'm not saying no names, but some buyers is paying, getting them, if they want market, they got to overpile the basket up. And I mean, that's just, and you go somewhere else and you try to, you're a little bit over what you feel is a good basket to be giving the person that, you mean, because your market's already tight enough as it is. And they got to come out. They don't come out, we're not gonna have no market at all. That's the whole bottom line to it.
Well, that was one of those things I was talking earlier, that reading the history of oysters here in Virginia, that's been a problem for 100 years. So I'm not sure we have a better system, but definitely here, you know, I think, you know,
And
law
another-
enforcement definitely is aware of the rounding issue, I think, is
Okay,
my
another
understanding.
thing, got these white shoals in here, it's gonna be nothing but hand tone. How you taking that off from the areas where it used to go straight across, how you taking that one area away from everything? And another thing, that's been you're probably not gonna make a day's work there, because that's been worked all year long. There's probably 100 bushel coming off that day right now, every day, since the public season closed. It ain't stopped. I mean, it hasn't stopped at all. Are we keeping that for just a group of people to work in the summertime? Or is it, I guarantee you, I go down there, you're not gonna make a day's work, because everything is coming off of that from 2.5 inches. It's this year's oysters, next year's oysters is coming off of it.
Well, I can't speak to that specifically. We haven't surveyed it and seen if there's any decline that we would see that wasn't explained by normal harvest. That's unfortunate that we're hearing that. I think the reason for that is the hand tongers at the end of the public season, when that areas were open, we're doing pretty good there. And that this area is so shallow and kind of isolated from the rest of the scrape areas that it would be potentially a good hand tong area where it grows a pretty marketable oyster. Haven't been broken up by the hand scrapes to a certain extent, but still being in good shape. It was pretty decent hand tong bottom, at least at the end of the last public season.
Like I said, I work down there every day. I don't know no one that worked there.
Okay.
No one that worked there, because you can't go there after a drudge has been there all year.
I guess, yeah. And I guess the
It's
other.
no good to you. I promise you, I don't care, there's a lot of horses. Hey, last day of season, hey, caught 16 bushels, but go there with a pair of shab tong, it's a world of difference. It's not gonna work out. So I was just wondering how that was, you know what I mean, if that's set aside just for that, if it's gonna work out, you need to put a clause in there. If it's not nothing, it needs to be, but taking that one area from there, you're gonna have boats go all around and somebody wind up being in there. So that's another thing. Everybody's used to one area straight line across, and then you got that one area taken out there. You're putting law enforcement, you're putting them and the person that's doing it, you're putting both sides in a position that neither one wants to be in.
Now, I think, again, what the condition is right now, I mean, before it had been hand tongable, it's very shallow. Another thing is on the replenishment side, this is an area in the scrape side of things that's very, very difficult to replenish just because of how shallow it is there. So, I mean, it's doable, but it's very difficult in terms of getting a larger tug in there, and that it could probably be planted better with the small boats. So one of the reasons is if you take it out of that, and despite what you said there, if only the harvest going on there is hand tongs, it's less likely that it's going to need replenishment. It may well need replenishment at this point, but we can see on the season, and definitely by the time we have this survey done, if it's not hand tongable, it's not hand tongable. So it's something that could be addressed at a later.
Yeah.
Oh, Andrew, on the York River, I guess this would be 2 years it'd be closed, right? We close it this year. I mean, what's your long-range projection? Are you looking at maybe possibly opening next year? Or, I mean, I knew we were on a 1 year rotation. Now we've gone 2 years. I was just a little interested in trying to find out, where we were going there.
Well, the York River had been on originally it was set up as a 3-year rotation with the Mob Jack, and the Mob Jack wasn't an equivalent area. And then here recently it kind of got not even a 1 year rotation. Both areas have been opened at points and at times. And the reason for leaving it closed now is Area 1, Timberneck, was just planted last year. And then Page's area, I always get it backwards because it's backwards from the Rappahannock area of 1, and the upper part of those areas was replenished the year before. So neither one of those areas has had that full 2 years. I have heard, this is again anecdotal, that the spat set in New York has been pretty good right now. So hopefully, that shell that's over there is good. And I think, again, we'll see on the survey, but having that shell get a full 2 or 3 years is much better than having it going right back after being heavily replenished. So that's the reasoning for that. And that's a discussion for next year is which of those areas, since they've both been out of rotation, likely Pages would be the next area to come in and Timberneck after that.
Okay.
And again, that hand tong area there in York got some of the dredge seed planted on it this year as well.
Okay.
But not all of it, so they should have areas where they can work, and that had a lot of small oysters last year that hopefully are market size, and that held 6 to 12 boats up there pretty consistently. They would normally be either in the Rappahannock or the James.
But does this address some of the concerns that folks had about there being a gap and spreading out the fleet? Thank you all for a great discussion, and thank you, Andrew. Are you looking for a motion to carry this to the committee?
That would be great to take forward. This is an official SMAC recommendation. I know there's been a lot of back and forth, and again, echoing what Jackie said there, I appreciate the time and effort and input that everyone puts into this every year. It really, from your point about the GPS there to shifting these areas around, it really is important to get the perspective from folks who are out there. And I like to not drive a dash too much, but unfortunately I'm inside more than you all are a lot of days. So.
Lee?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the plan that we have in front of us for this year with a contingency that we revisit in December, January, 1st of January.
I think probably January, with the way the commission meetings line up, we'll probably have that combined meeting in early December, so January, yep.
And revisit the possibility, see survey results and see the possibility of maybe opening some stuff in March, the first part of March.
Would the time frame work with that, with the amount of advertising and the rest? Because we ran into that last year.
Yes, so we are back to our 2-week window that we were prior to the executive order. So that executive order has been changed, I guess officially rescinded and replaced with another executive order.
We're no longer under their previous administration's Executive Order 19 or 39, which required agencies to have executive review of all regulatory changes. So the newest is Executive Order 17, which allows exempt agencies to be exempt again. So really, we are bound by our own code section, which is a 2-week newspaper ad as well as an advertisement.
Perfect. Just wanted to double check on that before we hamstrung ourselves.
It does help us be able to react to those natural resource needs.
Maybe for Rich's benefit, could Andrew or Lee repeat the motion that's on the table?
I can go for it. I think I captured it. It's the season we just discussed, shown before you, plus revisiting in January to make any adjustments that are needed for possible openings in March. Is that about right?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I will add, I'm glad that was added because I was concerned about the month of March. I mean, the Waterman didn't have much to do in March, really thin for that month. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to take a look at it then and maybe make some recommendations.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 I abstain.
Oh, Tommy Kellum abstains. Just giving Dan a moment. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. Thank you all again. Moving on to,
I said aye, but I was muted, I'm sorry.
thank you, Dan.
Gotcha, Dan.
Our next item is other business. Go ahead, Lee.
All right, I'd like to go back to what I was saying earlier when we first started this replenishment discussion. And just, we need to really brainstorm, and I have been myself since our last meeting on shells. I don't know the answer to the fossil shell dredge. I don't know the money-wise. Have we ever thought, and I'm trying to think outside the box, have we ever thought about contacting like Weeks Marine or Great Lake Dock and Dredge or Don John Marine or any of these companies that do these big dredging projects and maybe getting a bid from them? Or I guess first of all, we'd have to have some sort of parameters and standard operating procedure. Is there such?
So, no, very, very good points, and I think we have plans right now to have a discussion with internally and with Army Corps folks. We have a meeting set up to sort of discuss what it would look like to have a permit in place for a dredge, whether it's hydraulic, mechanical, whatever it is, to work in an area to be able to sort and extract fossil shells. So we're gonna try to get that meeting happening in September, and we're having internal discussions about trying to get it's called a request for proposals out, hopefully this fall potentially, or late winter, and see what, to your point, some of these private industry, big dredge companies could come up with to, I mean, the shell dredge is a big, complicated piece of machinery, but the actual complicated nature of it is just putting all the parts that are sort of out there and available all together and making them float. So it's not really a technologically challenging thing to do. There's just not been a need for any dredge company other than this company to do it. But that doesn't mean that if you put it out for a proposal that you at least get some people thinking about how they would do it, potentially end up with something better. But I think we have every intention of trying to start doing just that, of putting our heads together, seeing what we need to have a permit to allow that, and then putting that out for a proposal to let private industry and dredge companies take a look at it and see what they can come up with.
I mean, Weeks and Great Lakes for two have,
I did talk to Great Lakes up there in the past to sort of see if they had any interest when this did go out for bid. And, at the time, I didn't get a positive response, but, that is somebody that I did sort of reach out to just preliminarily when we were putting this out for bid earlier this year.
I mean, they've got a tremendous amount of assets around, that aren't being used, especially in the current political climate. So, we need to figure out something on that sooner than later. And that's all I wanted to say on that.
Well, I guess, Andrew, the biggest task what they have is separating the shells from the drudge spoils. No problem drudging it up. Anybody could do that, I guess, but was that part damaged and the shell barge drudge, was all that damaged too?
I don't know the specifics, but my understanding is a lot of that machinery was pretty old. Most of the damage, I believe, was actually structural to the hull and that sort of thing. The actual sorting apparatus just needed to be there. And that's, really what it is it's handling the volume of water is the biggest challenge in this. When you have that level of water coming in, it's not, normal aggregates don't have that level of water coming through them. So really you need a large dewatering operation. And once you get rid of the water, any kind of mining, shaking tables work. That's actually what they use, is just normal aggregate sorting screens.
Okay.
It's really just the dewatering part that takes that huge tower that you see. And once it's dewatered, it's just relatively small amounts of water in that shaker screen, which is just normal mining company shaker screen. So it's, if you gave a good fabricator a good budget and a year and a half, they could probably put something together. And if their dredging company's already got a lot together, I don't want to speak for them, but it's not an insurmountable task to get something put together and functional. It doesn't have to necessarily be identical to what we had.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have a written standard operating procedure or parameters for the dredging?
We have a very specific permit that really, the way it's currently written, only this hydraulic dredge with they call them elephant trunk discharges could work. So we'd have to get a new permit or update the permit to allow a different operation if it was going to be drastically different than what we had. But it's not an unaccomplishable task in a 6 month to a year time frame is pretty realistic.
Okay, so it's all encompassed in the
permit conditions,
okay.
Yeah.
Is that a core permit?
It's a joint permit application, so it is primarily a core permit, but it's reviewed by everyone that reviews the joint permit application. So DEQ and Army Corps, NOAA Fisheries, all those folks weigh in. Historic Resources. Your alphabet soup of federal and state folks all get a look at it.
We'll take a public comment at this time.
Yes.
Hey, you want to come on up?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that if I may. I realize that this is a complex problem, no doubt about it. But from my perspective, what we need to do is look at what we're doing right to figure out what we're not doing right. And if you look at areas 7 and 8, what we're doing right is we're constantly putting seed. If we did the same effort in the areas that we're not, we'd get the same result. What is seed? It is also live shell. It is growing live shell. So when you put seed there, you're actually expanding the bottom as the oysters grow to begin with. And that's just my opinion on that. If you look at what you're doing right, it ain't hard to see what you're not doing right. And that's just how I feel about that. Area 1, a lot of the problem in Area 1, in my opinion, is sedimentary issues. It's not worked. The last time we did dredge it, the oysters were half in the bottom. You could see the mud line on them. Patent Tong has done nothing to help Area 1. And if you go back in history and you look at it, in the 2010s and 2012s, we had 70 boats 2 months catching 24 bushels a day there. Now you can't do hardly anything there. And that'll tell you what the Patent Tong has done to what the dredge has done. And that's just where I want to leave it. But I just feel as if you look at what you're doing right, it'll tell you what you're not doing right. And I'll leave it there.
Your name?
William Saunders.
Thank you, sir. Any other items for other business at this time? Thank you, Lee. Thank you. Last is public comments. So we have those underway. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Thank you for being here tonight. With that said, I think we're through our agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
A motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed say nay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Leave 'em.
Safe travels.